Okay, I thought I would record the process that I go through for making a map for the game. I thought that might be interesting to some people. This is going to be a map for a one session little mini story arc. For the next session, the last session was a little bit of a character heavy session. So I think we're going to do a less serious kind of palette cleanser before moving into the next main world story arc, as the last one was a character based one. In the game, our party has made friends, in a manner of speaking, with a character known as the Brassicomancer, a character who has a significant amount of power over brassicas, cabbages, and broccoli and the like. And in this session, they're going to visit the Brassicomancer per their own request, and they are going to find that the Brassicomancer is in dire conflict with a group of Fae, comprised mostly of duendes, Fae that are essentially the grumpy landlords of the Fae world. And they believe they have a claim over the Brassicomancer's land, which is essentially an infinite subdimension, so quite a bit of land. Only, of course, for growing brassicas. So we are going to have an encounter with these duendes. We're going to need a map that has a little plot out front of the building that the Brassicomancer lives in, the building itself, and a plot in the back where there's going to be a little set piece where they have to kind of do a puzzle combat with this group of duendes. So, I'm thinking that we want a long, thin, skinny map. I'm thinking that that encounter area should not be traversable by a single character in one round. Now, in Pathfinder 2, a character has 3 actions that they can use to move, and I think our fastest character has a move speed of 30 feet or 6 squares, which means that the arena must be at least 18 squares. I don't want it to be massive, so let's call it 20. That will require them to have at least some positioning. 20 squares across. I think that's fine. I think it wants to be 20 square specifically. And we want a couple of squares either side for a little bit of surrounding set dressing, because that always looks good. So we want a number of columns. We probably want to be, let's say, 26. So we've got 3 on either side. And then we want at least 26 for the height of the arena, plus the house, which is probably going to be maybe a little bit below the arena for the Brassicomancer and Mildred, the orphan they've picked up, if she's still around, to hang out in safely. A little bit of a patio area, which is maybe 4 squares, so that's 30. Plus the size of the house itself, which if it's about 20 wide, but a little bit less, maybe 16, because there's probably going to be a path on either side. Maybe another 8 for the house, and then the front garden probably wants another 10. Plus a couple of squares of foliage on that side, but that's kind of already accounted for. So about 48. Let's create that map. So here we have a nice, long, skinny map. And we don't want it to be water. This is happening on land. It's happening on quite a lush land. So just to begin with, we're going to use the base grass detail, lower the softness all the way down, make it really big, and just fill this bad boy in all the way. Let's show the grid. Now, let's sketch out our areas with assets that we're likely to use. We have a fence. We said, I think, 3. Get that about square on. We don't really need to use the angle piece. In fact, using the angle piece, is that going to cause us a headache? No. Because everything's right angles anyway. We do want to vaguely line things up so that it looks good. We have an angle here. And we're just going to connect the dots, as it were. Now, it's good to try and get these to overlap, but you don't have to be super precise. That is very lucky that that lines up like that, given that they don't line up with the grid pieces. Okay, we can now group that. Fence line. Copy, paste, rotate it by 90. Slang it there. Ungroup. Get rid of that. Rotate it by 90 the other way. Slang it there. Line it up. And as I say, they don't have to be perfectly lined up, but you want it within a couple of pixels, really. Ungroup, delete that. Ungroup that. And actually, we don't really want that to be a fence, so I won't add the fence in there, but I will add more fence. Yeah, I'll leave that there for now. I'll grab a little bit of that and continue it down here. In fact, no, I won't continue it down here. I'm going to say that that is going to be fenced off by the foliage. So let's get the edge foliage in, because that's quite easy. Get some foliage. We want it nice and thick and dense. We're probably going to use bushes. Plant doesn't have much variation. The tree's conifer doesn't really suit the style. It doesn't have to be particularly realistic in this case, because it is very explicitly something that exists at the whim of a naturally magical being. For the sake of, for Pete's sake, for the sake of keeping this all good, let's create a group out of that, back fence, and then lock it, so that's not going to move around anymore. And then we just want to like paint nice thick foliage. This is using the multiple brush. All the way, and you know what, you can be a bit, I think we probably don't want it down there, but we'll have it there anyway. And you can be a little rough with it, because you can clean it up later. We get it all the way up there. And then, carefully selecting just the edge, we can prune it back. So, because of how dense this is, if you see the selection box is within the fence by quite a way, so it only selects the pieces that are particularly over the fence. And if you delete them, the ones that are further back will kind of cover for it, which is quite nice. So we want to get like all of them and bring it back. And we want to get them and bring it back. And then just about here. That might be a bit much. Maybe here. Just bring these ones here back a bit. And then, because it can be quite a strain to have so many stamps, you want to make sure you clean up outside of the area as well. It shouldn't affect the density in the map too much, but you don't want too many stamps that are like majority outside. See, that's too many because we're getting gaps now. Just want to slightly clean it up. And honestly, like these minor gaps that are like here, you can see that there's a little bit of the ground poking through. In fact, I mean, we don't want the same foliage there, and probably not there either, actually, thinking about it. I'm going to want a more manicured fence there, because the bottom line here, for context, that is the interface of the Brassica's domain with the material plane. So that's going to want to be fairly normal. But yeah, these little gaps on the side here. I don't know if my players have ever noticed that kind of minor error in a map, and we've been playing for, I think, a couple of years now in this game. I want to say coming up for 2 years, and I have made some real shonky maps. And no one has ever been like, hey, there's a gap there. Now, I don't know if that's them being polite. It may well be because they're very polite people. And they don't want to criticize my effort unduly, which I appreciate. But also, like, it doesn't really matter. It's an aid. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you're doing these for a home game, you aren't selling them. So the only people who have a right to care are your players. And frankly, the amount of effort that goes into making these things, they have no grounds to, lol. But for real, it's fine. Like, I don't think they mind. Now, the Brassica's hut, or the Brassicomancer's cottage, I should say, it's a cottage, needs an outline. I'm not sure. She's an old school farmer type. So maybe we're talking like dry stone cottage, rather than like a manufactured carpentered building. So maybe we're talking like rough walls, primitive walls, maybe. Primitive walls dark to show the age. We're still in multiple. Let's go back to single. Now these quite happily fill almost exactly 1 square wide at standard scale. That's an important thing when you're placing these stamps, because they don't have a vectorized line width. If I put the scale way up, you can see the lines on the outsides get way thicker. So because they don't have a vectorized line width, you want to keep everything at about the same size or it starts looking a bit weird. So I think we said like 8. Do we have a short one? We do have a short piece. About 8 for the hut. And then there's the front garden area. Might go a little further on that. I might go to 10. Now with this style of wall, you kind of want to match how the pieces interact with each other, with how the individual bricks interact with each other within the stamp. So you want to line it up a bit. You can't really do random stamps with these because the stamps are of different length, and there's some like angle pieces and some corner pieces, so you've kind of just got to cycle through a bit. Now we wanted a little oops, careful. We wanted a little passage on the side, so let's turn here. And start making our way. Ooh, that's got a real jaggedy piece. Start making our way up. Need a short one. And then the turn, maybe the other turn for this one. Is that a turn? It is a turn, but I don't like it. That's not a right angle turn. That's the turn I want. Now you want to be careful a little bit to make sure that you don't reuse the same. Well, you can with this kind of thing. You can reuse the same piece quite happily because it's quite chaotic. Like if there's only two in a row, it's quite hard to see that that's a duplication of the piece. But for something that is a bit more feature heavy, like I don't think it's in the watercolor battle maps, I think it's in watercolor cities. Core, shall we say? No. Houses? Yeah, like one of these pieces. If you have a city block that is... Which one was it? Was it that one? That's just this repeatedly. And it's not planned. If it's not a city like Barcelona, where it looks intentionally quite similar, that's... Shit. That's very noticeable. Let's lock those bushes. So you want to try and mix up the stamps a little if you can. That's the same one I used before. Now here we have an awkward bit where it doesn't quite line up, so you can kind of jimmy things around a little. The most important thing is that the lines touch to give a kind of illusion of being a contiguous structure. Okay, now let's check which layer our grid is on. It's currently on layer 3. I'm going to bring that down to layer 0 because that's where I prefer it. I'm going to group that for cottage walls and lock it. Now they're all on layer 1. The outside bush should probably be on layer 5. That's about the least over the toppable thing there is. The cottage walls equally should probably be on layer 4, just below the bushes. Now, what else do we want? We need a hedge. We need a proper hedge. Do we have a hedge in watercolor battle maps? No. I want a wall that is made of tree. And this is a problem that I have with Incarnate. It does not have enough things in its stamp catalogue, and it doesn't release them that often. It does get updates. It gets like holiday updates, like there's a pumpkin in here somewhere at the moment. But especially the watercolor sets don't see much love, and I much prefer working with the watercolor sets because things have the nice outline. It makes things very clear what things are. Yeah, we've got this Halloween one here, so we've got a bunch of pumpkins and cauldrons and coffins. But there's a meaningful lack of... how is there not a hedge? We got trees, but that's a tree. I want something more manicured. I assume there isn't something from Watercolor Cities I could pinch. No, not really. Terrain. It's going to be more land stuff than tree stuff. Elves might have something. See, even in here, you've got vine walls. Now, because this is intended for cities, you have to really pump the size to get that line thickness about the same. That's probably too far. That's about a good comparison. But like, yeah, about 175 to 200, I think. Somewhere in that range. Gives roughly the same line thickness. Like, this is kind of like it. I could probably use that. Especially, you know what you can do? If you go into colour, I'm just going to put one down and like really pump the saturation. And then we can twist that into a real green, a real vibrant green. And then we can, maybe if I pump the contrast, bring down the saturation a little. Just a little. Still up, but a little less high. Make it... So the issue with doing this in Incarnate is that it tends to make the sprite a little bit more crunchy. It messes with the aliasing a little, but it is an option. I think that might work. It definitely looks more structured. So we can... What we can do, because this is a bit thinner, we'll place this on the line. Get a couple of different, if I rotate this around, it can pull double duty, so that's the edge. And then we're going to want to extend the outside bush a little bit. Just going to copy and paste a couple of these trees to just cover that part. So it creates a full boundary here. And I might... Ooh, no, let's not do that. That's terrible. I might just fill in this gap as well, so that the house and the outside boundary are also contiguous. Okay. So that's kind of our blocking. So what I want at the front here is I want something growing in this space, and I want now... Okay, important thing. Don't forget to save. Brassicomancer's Cottage. Especially because this is an app running within a browser. So if the computer dies, if the browser dies, if the tab dies, or if the site dies for whatever reason, and it's a complicated site, so it dying every now and then is not entirely unreasonable. If any of those happen, you lose all of your progress, and it's very annoying. So I highly recommend avoiding that. But yes, we want something in this space growing. I want a duende in there trying to collect rent in the form of that, and then they try and attack it because it's stealing from their friend. And when they do so, they realize their weapons and their spells are ineffective against it because they are not operating under normal material plane rules. The duende runs off, possibly being chased by the Brassicomancer, and then she enlists them in fighting her war for her, which is the set piece that happens up here. I'm not entirely sure what I want that set piece to be right now. I'm fairly sure it's going to be some kind of multi-round, like, I think rule of threes, there's going to be 3 quote-unquote rounds, not combat rounds, but like narrative rounds of escalating difficulty, where they have to defend the Brassicomancer's field from an encroaching horde of duendes. And they'll have some special tools to do it with. Now, what shape that's going to take is a good question. Are there any of these that actually look like a cabbage? Do we have a cabbage? Do we have any food? Now, I can't use the pumpkins, importantly, because pumpkins are not brassicas, they are gourds. So, what I mean, the normal pumpkin could maybe be recolored, but it'll always look like a gourd, which is not ideal for this purpose. But if I'm lucky, here's the food, here's the tavern food. No, there isn't a pumpkin among them. No, not pumpkin, a cabbage. Kitchen. Ingredients, herbs and jars. No, okay, that may have to be a little theatre of the mind. We'll get a nice distinct placeholder plant. One of these, maybe. Size it down a little, because it's quite big, though the Brassicomancer will grow their plants big. And then if we have, like, a grid of them, like this. Now, what does that give us? Is that split on 3s? It is. So what do we have here? So this, while I'm making this map, I'm also thinking of what the actual encounter's going to be. So if we have, maybe there's a really short tutorial one, and then 3 proper ones, and the tutorial one doesn't have any stakes. Just to teach them the mechanics, because this is going to be materially different from a normal combat. But you also have to be wary of time. Our sessions run, they're meant to run 3 hours, sometimes they run 2.5, so somewhere between 2.5 and 3 with occasional overruns. So the preamble is probably going to take 10 to 20 minutes. The encounter with the first duende outside is probably going to be another 10. Catching up with the Brassicomancer is probably going to be another 20. So we probably have about 2 hours to introduce the mechanics, tutorialize them, and then use them. If we have 2 hours to do that, then it's like half an hour per, but the later ones are going to take longer. The earlier ones, therefore, have to take less time. They have 3 actions each. Realistically, one of them is going to be used for movement each round, and maybe 2 of them are going to be used for attacking, where attacking may take 2 actions, because it's done from range or it has an AoE component. I think at the end, the Brassicomancer must be left with at least half of the crop. I think that's a nice achievable goal that can be made threatening, mostly by numbers. What we really want then, is a sprite that is a hole in the ground. We want a nice lumpy earth sprite, which we may have to manufacture out of other stamps. Because I don't think there's going to be... Is that an egg? Monster egg. Nice. We may have to manufacture that. How can we manufacture that? Maybe big cauldron. Maybe big cauldron. That has a really nice hole in the middle of it. If we make that dark, and if we can skew it like real brown. So it was pretty good where it was. Maybe bring the saturation. Saturation's about good where it was. A bit darker. And then we take, what could we take? What's good? I need down here, I think. These terrain markers, is there a really tight circle? A nice semicircle, there's one. If we just kind of build up around it, we have something that looks a bit like a hole in the ground. There's another one in here somewhere. There. Create group, hole. Right, so instead of having a small leafy plant on each of these squares, we actually want a hole. I've spelled that wrong. Oh well. A hole. And then what I'll do is I'll have a stamp for a cabbage. I'll have a token for a cabbage in Roll20 and put a cabbage on each of those holes and then delete it when it gets pulled up. And then we'll have a nice de facto evolving map. Now, these are all going to look very similar unless you manually rotate them, because you can't do a programmatic rotation on a group, which is a bit sad. And because the hole isn't central, the positioning is going to need to be tweaked for each one. And what I'm going to do at this point is I'm just going to duplicate that, now that that positioning is about right, and bring them onto each line. Here we go. So that's all of them, and then just grab each of them and give them a tweak so it looks a little bit less uniform. And you got to make sure you're a little variable on where you tweak them, because there's a big risk. If you're doing this to make it look, I mean, I say a big risk, it's relative to the amount of danger, of which there is very little because it's a battle map for a home D&D game. But there's a risk that if you tweak them like that, you tweak each of them the same amount. Oops, don't change the size. And if you tweak each of them the same amount, then they end up uniform again. You've made the same change to everything, so they look the same. Which is not ideal. Okay, so we have a bunch of holes. Perfect. Okay. I think that's all I want to do with this, because I want this area to be very, very clear for the players. I can now lock that, and then I want to grab those vines just to do the due diligence. I want to create group, and I want to lock them. So, let's start thinking about the non-encounter decoration a little bit. We wanted this to be like a little patio-y area. Now, this isn't going to be a modern patio. It's not super well defined. So what we want is, we kind of want this outer wall texture at a normal scale. Now what we would do is put this back fence wants to be on layer 4. that? Oh, is it because it's locked? Four. There we go. Like something like this, to outline the edge a little bit more strongly, and then we could find a nice like dungeon floor light would work quite well. Or oh no, here we go, one of these like sandstone floor. Obviously you'd have to match the hue and color, but it creates a nice sharp edge that means you don't have to super carefully match the edge of this. And then even if you do that, you can see like those stones, naturally speaking, for a floor like this they would probably jut over, right? They would encroach, so that hard edge doesn't look natural. But if you have that kind of defined edge on it, it helps take the edge off of that kind of discontinuity. But the outer wall stamp is very manufactured. It doesn't really suit. So I'm just wondering if there's a similar one for a more scraggly floor. And somehow I doubt that there is, because that's not really what watercolor battle maps are meant for. They're meant to be a lot more defined, and that is something that I actually quite like about them. Stone plateau segments. Oh, this is what we're looking for, baby. This is exactly the kind of thing we need. So we are going to just build this up along the edge, I think. We'll get a couple of different lengths. We want to get rid of this outer wall. There's a flippy here. Not that one, but the other one, just to make it look a little bit different. And wouldn't you know, that's the perfect width for what we want. Get the short one just to come in around here. We could even use this corner one because it's especially short. It's one tile a piece, just to grab that. We don't need it to be well defined up against the wall because the wall itself will mask that boundary. So we can just come across here, bring it down here, and we can say that this is the edge. Get that short one to just kind of fill in the gap, and that'll look fine. You can have that overlap, just like that. Okay, so that defines the little patio-y area. And now we want to get one, probably the sandstone floor is the one I'll go for. But let's just do our due diligence and check. Dungeon floor alpha is quite good. Actually, that might be the one. If we can match the color of that to the color of those tiles. So what do we need to do? We need to make it brighter. Contrast is pretty good. Maybe lower the saturation. That's pretty good. It conflicts a little bit with the thing, with the stamps, but now that's as if those were laid clean. So we need to dirty them up a bit. So let's dirty them up a bit. Let's get some soil. Let's drop the opacity and just kind of, oh, we want the softness quite high on this now. And just kind of dirty them up a bit. Yeah, and in fact, really what we want to do is we want to grab, say, ooh, We want this to be a background soil, so let's go with clay soil. We actually want that way high, and we want to paint, because this is a heavily trafficked area that's meant to be paved. So we'll start it with this. Try and avoid any gaps. Then over that we put the stones. Then maybe we go over it again with this, but it's at like 20%, 0.2, to give it a maximum softness, to give it a little bit of wear. And you don't have to be super precise with this, because the wear wouldn't be precise either. And then with the detail, maybe we go over it a bit heavier, maybe a 0.4. And ironically, we probably want to focus on the non-trafficked areas. And then you have kind of like a dirty patio along the side. I'm less and less happy with the stone plateau segments the more I look at that. What if we get rid of that? Well, we've got some very defined boundaries, which is a bit grim. So maybe we don't do that. Maybe we get rid of all of that. Maybe we just Control Z all of those plateau segments. And get rid of that wall. Maybe we take a different approach. Maybe it's more naturalistic. Maybe we have this is more of a dirt path, a dirt area. And then so you want to kind of, it's subtle, it's real subtle, but if you use the terrain to signify where people have walked in a bit, so the Brassicomancer would want to travel like along the rows and columns. So with a real light touch, what you can do, I might bring that size down a bit, is just do this. And that's probably going to need a second pass because it's barely visible. It is going down, isn't it? Yeah. But the crucial bit, the distinction, is that the softness is super high. So what that mimics is the central line being travelled quite often and the edges barely being travelled. And then the outside edge is untouched, because why would you access this one from here when you could access it from here and get access to all four of them, right? So this area, I'm more happy with this. I think this area is going to remain dirt, and I think we're just going to have some like details and tchotchkes and gardening supplies here. The floor on the inside of the cottage is not grass. The question is, what is it? Maybe this is where we have something like this, which has how does that look? I mean, it matches the wall very nicely. I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's a one and done. We still haven't decided what's going on here. I think I want the front to be like mustards. Now, on another screen, off the camera, I'm just going to Google image search mustard plant. So they are fairly thin, yellow, of course, flowers, fairly heavily branched with moderately sized leaves. Okay, so we're looking for, let's look for a flowering plant that might look a bit like a mustard plant. Maybe one of these. No, they're all definitely rose bushes. I'm fairly sure there is one. Water lilies. We have that foliage tag. The tags are quite good. That's quite similar. That's quite similar. Tiny floral plants. The issue with this is that, so the hue will change the whole plant. So if we target a yellow flower, the closest of which is that, which is nowhere near the vibrancy we need, so then we push the saturation, but then the leaves are blue. What would be really nice is if the stamps had a like a color specific tweaking system, but I recognize that that would be quite hard. Not that it shouldn't be done, but that I don't expect it to be quick. So let's go back to normal. Let's see. A naturally yellow one with green leaves would be really nice, but I'm not sure one exists. I can't see one. There's nothing in that. There's no, I mean, that's the closest in that, but that looks nothing like a mustard plant. That's closer, but again, looks nothing like a mustard plant. So maybe they're not mustards. Maybe they are something else. I don't want to. Do I want to use that? No, let's use a small one. Let's use like this, maybe. We won't random stamp it, but we will random direction it. And maybe we have like... no, it looks too much like the fence. It needs to have some colour to it. It needs to have some colour to it. Like, the rose bushes would be really nice if I could make those... I mean, maybe I can make them yellow. Push the saturation, make it brighter. I mean, it's definitely a fucking teal leaf, but it looks a lot closer. Yeah, maybe we can use that. She probably would grow big hunks of it, but there's only one big hunk stamp, so we're gonna have to be a little clever. Sorry if you got a Discord notification noise there, that was me, not you. Don't check your Discord. Let's just line up. And they are different. That's the one I used though, because we've got random stamps on. So this building still needs a door, crucially. So we can't do the whole thing. And the door's probably going to be one wide. So maybe we do something like this. That's very fortuitous that that covers it entirely. And then, like, a big old one here. And maybe a big old one here. That's a 1x1. That's a bigger 1x1. This is a bit more janky. So that can fill in there. And then maybe we keep that space free, so she walks that, well, she doesn't come up this way, but this way is kept free, and she goes that way and up. So maybe we have, like, here, And then a couple of guys like that. Let's give that a spinny so it looks a bit different. Bring that down here. And she's got just this this mustard kind of growth out front. And it's okay if it looks a little bit unnatural, a little bit unlike a normal mustard, as long as it's still arguably identifiable, because she is magic. She is literally magic. It's a bit orange. Can we make that yellower? I have to make that brighter to make that yellow. Ooh, psychedelic. Let's zoom way in. See, that's kind of yellow, but now it's really blue-leaved. I think that's because I really cranked the saturation and brightness. If I bring that back down a bit, see, that's the natural colour. I don't want them to read as roses, is the issue. And I want them to read as distinct from this as well. That's probably about as good as it's going to get, if I'm honest. Okay. Right, let's look at this area, because this area is quite easy. We want a table or two. We want them to be raggedy tables, but not like broken down at all. So it's probably going to be one of these tavern tables. The desk is a little short. The wooden table is honestly a little big. We will probably go with desk, and we will probably shrink it to about 90 to fit into a single thing. And let's just put that there, and then another one here, just so that she has some area to work on. Now, what is she going to work on? That's a good question. What does she need to tend to her plants? Well, she probably needs a well. Where would a well be on this little property? You wouldn't want it too close to the house, but it would need to be accessible. You wouldn't want it too close to the entrance, because then people could damage it. That doesn't leave us very many spots. That basically puts it up here. So maybe we hand wave that. Maybe it's magic. Maybe she collects rainwater in a barrel. Standing barrels, vertical barrels would be good, but I don't know if we have any. Is there a... Oh, we have containers. Containers is a good tag. You'll want a lot of containers. Maybe we put a couple of barrels back here. Now, barrels can't intersect like walls can, but they can be quite tight. She has a couple of barrels for collecting rainwater. She probably has a few sacks. These sacks are not necessarily... Well, would she have sacks? Does she need sacks? What would you have in a sack for gardening? Well, it's probably fertilizer or seeds. She doesn't need seeds because she's a Brassicomancer. She is a halfway towards being a primal nature fae almost. So she probably doesn't need seeds or fertilizer. But would she keep some around force of habit from her old life? I think she probably would. So let's give her a few sacks. And because they overlay, you can do something like that, and it gives a real good impression of a pile, because it is a pile. Okay, and then the other thing she'd want is tools. Which tools? Well, this is your generic tools right here. She would have a spade, but it would be stood up. What's that? That's a fishing rod. She probably wouldn't have a fishing rod. She'd have both of these kinds of spade, but they wouldn't be out like that. She'd definitely have one of these, and that can go right on the table. There aren't actually that many other tools. She wouldn't have a staff, that's silly. She would probably have a broom, but that would probably be inside. Armor, shields, weapons. I mean, is there a weapon that looks appropriate? A hand axe, maybe, for wood? Like, obviously having a crossbow is a bit silly, but an axe is reasonable. Okay. Stationary tools. No, we're talking water wheel, we're talking bellows, ballistas and anvils, so that's not the type we want. What about pack equipment and tools? That's where that came from. Okay. So tools are of little use to us. Water trough, no. Inkwell, no. Cool. Would you have a fire out there? Why would she have a fire out there? Why would she need to burn or heat anything out there? I don't think she would. A bucket. How is there not a bucket in watercolor battle maps? Seriously. Well, if you went into fantasy battle maps, I bet it would have one. And I did do a few maps in this style, but it can be a little jarring switching between. You can see how many more stamps there are in this. Like, maybe I should just switch to using this. But I find it a lot less distinct, personally. Perfect fucking mustard. Look at that. I'm not redoing the whole map now. Sunk cost fallacy, I know, but you got different types of fucking wine barrel there. Wine press. I bet there's a bucket in here. Oh, hey, look, there's 4 different fucking kinds of bucket and an entire thing for farm tools. Christ above, give watercolor some love. Seriously. If I put something in from that isn't from watercolor, it's going to look a bit jarring. So we'll make do with what we've got. Maybe some pots. We have pots. We have urns. A big cauldron. I do want her to have a big cauldron, an actual big cauldron, because she is like a witch. So let's just put one of them in there. And yeah, let's just throw some urns on these tables. These are some big ass urns. But that's fine. And that's a little equipment area. This is starting to look a little barren in this area here. I wonder if there are any other tchotchkes we could throw in. Really, she should probably have this kind of pot instead of a cauldron, actually. Because we're looking for a more homely look. A more almost tavern-y look. Let's rotate that so the splayed legs are against the wall. What's the other option? Oh, it's not steaming. Should there be a not steaming? Should it be steaming? No, it should be steaming, because she's always expecting guests. She's always got that eternal forever stew on the go. Okay. Oh, no, there's a spike trap. would she have around the side? What would she have around the side? You know, she would have is okay. How is a medieval cottage laid out? Irish cottage, hearth, kitchen, bedroom, bedroom or parlour. Okay. So maybe this is like here, and maybe there's a little separating thing. Now, what would that be made of? Let's look at what we have for walls. That might be made of a simple wooden wall. Frankly, it might just be a big curtain, if I can spell. But the only curtain we have is this one, which is obviously intended for a window. So maybe we stick with a wall. Why is that huge? We don't use a fence for it, because we're already using the fence. It'll read weird. Thin wall. That's not thin. That's huge. I want it to be way thinner than that. I want it to be like that. And because these are straight, you really want them to be lined up as best as possible. Which that isn't, but we'll fix that in a minute. And then we have an actual end piece on it. There we go. And then her actual bed, which is going to want to be a real simple affair. I think I prefer that one. It's going to want to be right up against that wall. And again, this wall, which I want to group, wants to be above everything else. Tavern pack is probably going to be the most useful here. Table's full. At full size, not 100 times the size, but at full size. Now, so this was previously for her and one other guy, so let's... You wouldn't want it against the entrance wall, you'd want it against the back wall. That's how it would be laid out. Someone would have their back to here, which would be quite warm, so let's put it back here. These are stools. Stools are good. Square stools, because they don't necessarily have the artistry to make round ones. It would be simpler to make square ones. However, we are going to have down here 2 round ones, because one thing about this lady is that she tells fortunes with her brassicas, and she would definitely have a fancier setup for that. Maybe one of these. Maybe one of these, and maybe... God, that's slightly awkward, isn't it? Maybe it's at a jaunty angle, because it's magic, and magic does shit like that. Does this have stools? I would love if this had stools, but it doesn't seem to. It has big old fancy wizard chairs. So maybe we just tweak the colour and saturation. I think we want that to be darker, and I think we want that to be a little less saturated, and that's damn near perfect. And then we want to put some wizardly accoutrements. A few candles. She's not the type to have skulls, but she would have a bunch of herbs in a jar. Maybe I only need to pick one because they're quite big. These herbs on a string, now these are very good. We can just run these in corners. And up against walls. If we just tweak that a little to make it a little bigger so it stretches. It's not so big that it stretches the imagination of the scene. And I'm thinking the door, we put the door there. Okay, that's fine. If I just grab all of them and not that, group them, fortune telling area, and then rotate that 180. No, I want to rotate that 90. And then we can slam it here instead. So she would be sat there and the fortunes would be told here. We probably don't want to give her a big old portal. That's probably not the move, as funny as that would be. I don't think I established that she had a cat. She's very naturalistic and druidy, so she probably wouldn't be getting any of her information from books. She wouldn't care for maps. She wouldn't care for like astrolabes or globes, or an orb, really. That's not her way of divination. She might have an egg. I could give her an egg. A big old egg. An egg of intrigue. They could spy the egg and wonder what it is and what it is for. Of course, the little secret is that it's just a little bit of decoration, but maybe we build something off of that. Maybe there's just like an egg hanging out here under that string, and maybe it's on some straw? Is there like a straw bed? Are we still on Wizard Pack? Let's not be on Wizard Pack. Hay? Yeah, something like that. There's a big old egg in the corner on a thing of hay. Let's rotate that around a bit until it kind of fits. Maybe that. Maybe the opposite of that. Maybe that. Maybe that. Is that rotated at all? It is. It'd be funny if I rotated it a bunch and then just didn't change it. Have we got anything else we could have in here? Now, you don't want to make it too cluttered. It doesn't want to be too cluttered. Oh, she wants a little basin. Or sink. Or something. There's just nothing in the watercolour battle map. I really should switch to the other one. Scaffolding. Maybe there's something in scaffolding. Maybe she has some scaffolding up like here. But some really janky. This would make good like watchtower or like watch platforms for just peeking over a wall. We could put a little bit of scaffolding there. It wants to look kind of natural, but also this is the struggle, right? That it needs to look both natural and appropriate for being a battle grid. And it can be tricky to strike that balance. Let's get some wall torches. A couple of wall torches in here. She doesn't need one there because there's probably a fire under that pot. But she probably would want one in the bedroom, but not near the hay, because that would be dangerous. I don't know, I don't... No, she'd probably use lanterns. Like lanterns with like fireflies in it, that's much more her vibe. They're huge, what the fuck? Be smaller. Just put a little lantern in the corner there. Maybe there's one on the... No, I'm at layer -1. Maybe there's one on the dining table. There's a whole ass glowing shrine. We're not... Maybe we are in need of one of them. We'll say no. We'll be conservative on that, I think. I should probably have a rug. Not a castle fancy rug, but a basic ass like tavern simple rug. Here we go. There's probably a circular one there. And then like a squarish one here. Because, you know, she's not fancy, but she does live here with a... Well, she has historically lived here with a person. And it, look... It's a good joke, right? The rug really ties the room together. But just adding that little detail to the floor makes it feel a lot more lived in. Oh, and we need like another table. We need a work table, like a kitchen counter table. We're probably looking at the tavern for this. Need like one of these here by the pot, on which she is preparing food and such. Knife. Oh, there's a little knife. I love a little knife. This is way, 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 way too wide. So what we can do is leave that one alone because it's not the one you think. You want the height. Shrink it to 50. Now it looks a bit silly, but if we go away and just kind of not pay much attention to it, and then come back, it's not bad. It's not bad. It'll do. I will keep complaining that we are quite limited on the stamps we have. I should make that size 100 again. That is a huge plate. That plate is like 3 feet across. Like, seriously. Scale. Scale is so awkward. Couple of plates. Little bundle of cutlery. Now it won't read very well, but hopefully it'll read well enough. Spices. That's too big. She'd have small amounts of spices, but she would have spices because she's literally growing mustard. Sacco spices, that's a good call. Where does she keep the Sacco spices? Well, it wouldn't be by the door because then it would get contaminated and it would blow around in breezes. It would be somewhere out of the way. The main room doesn't have a grey area. This area is spoken for by the eating area. This area is spoken for by the divination area. This corner has a bunch of humidity from the pot, which would ruin the powdered spices. So it's probably going to have to go back here, which is fine. Let's throw some mugs in just in the back here, or whatever these are. Are they mugs? The cups? Yeah, cups. We like a cup. That is a pot and pan. Oh yeah, let's have a pan. Just kind of there. So she's got food, she's got shelter. She doesn't have an excellent source of water, but we can say these are water barrels. So she's got food, water, shelter. She has security. She has fulfillment. And that's kind of what you're looking for in a living area. There's still a lot of space in here. Maybe she needs kind of like a dresser, but not a dresser. Something a bit more primitive than a dresser. Maybe just like a clothes line. I don't want to throw in just a pile over. I actually got a random sock sprite. Incredible. I don't want to throw a pile of clothes, as that would be silly. But she also wouldn't have something as manufactured as that kind of chest. Maybe a crate? How did people store clothes in the medieval era? Just in chests, okay. In chests and then in wardrobes. I still think that dresser's too fancy, but a good old basic cabinet, now that we can run with. Let's put a cabinet there. And I kind of feel like there would be one in here, but we're a bit tight for room. We could put it there, but then it's got this mirror, and when that's not intentional, that can be awkward. Maybe it goes there. Maybe it goes there, and it used to be here, but they needed the room to safely store the egg. So it pivoted around. And then whoever wants to get to this can still, like, get in there. Yeah, that's a bit of environmental storytelling. We can go with that. We can go with that. Okay. And that, I think, might be the map done. Let's just double check that all of our objects that are meant to be above the grid, which is basically anything that isn't the floor, are above the grid. Really, the rug should probably be below the grid. How fucking low is this? Oh, that's what I've been touching accidentally. No, I want to touch the rug. Rug should probably be below the grid, as they are an element of the floor. But everything else, especially anything that is blocking, needs to be above the grid. So all of the walls, all of the fences, all of the significant furniture is at least interrupting movements. And I think it's justifiable to have the holes above the grid, as they are protruding from the earth. Ah, yes, the doors into these various places. Okay, so this is important. We nearly forgot the doors. So let's get a door in these vines. Let's delete that. And we will get some much oh no, bring that back. I want that. Much shorter length of vine. That's become not zeroed for a moment there, so let's fix that. We just want to kind of tie it up like that so that there's a little entrance. And you know what, I'm not keen on how they join, so maybe we take this mid-length and just kind of layer it over in a few spots to give it a bit more depth. So there's that little entrance. They're meant to be wooden. No, we had an archway in the previous thing. I don't think I can justify arch. Gate, maybe? Gate would be good. Do we have a gate? What's this? This is stable fence. Oh, I see. That has a little gate attached to it. That's why. Okay. A door. Surely we've got some doors. That could work. If I bring the size down a little bit. Put it like here. Maybe I should use that one, but we'll play with the hue and sat for this, or mostly the saturation and brightness. I want to saturate it, but make it darker. Make it a bit more weathered. There's a little gate there. That'll do. I might also, if I select stamps from this set, bring down the brightness and tinker with the hue a bit on this. Oh, I haven't got all of them. Why haven't we got all of them? Probably because they're locked or in a group. Okay, my object list has become unwieldy. So let's group them, scaffolding, lock. Not that. That is the whole lot. Group them, outdoors, stuff. Lock, group, probably just all of that. Indoors stuff, lock. Let me grab this lot, and that's grouped. Mustards, lock, and then that wants to ungroup, and then I should be able to grab all of them, create group, hedge. That's spelled wrong, whatever, it's fine, it's for internal use. And then everything but the wooden door. Okay, here we go. We want to bring the hue maybe more into, yeah, it could be like a woven wood. Bring the saturation up, bring the brightness down. And then it looks more like wood with some leaves coming out of it. That's pretty sexy. And then if I make that a bit bigger, but put it behind it, it kind of hides it a little. That looks good. We'll go with that. And then we also want in the, oh lord, cottage walls group. Get rid of that. And you can see that edge there is ragged and it's very well hidden by the wall. We want to just brick that up like that. And then we want another door. What kind of door do we want? It's probably one of these. It's a very... I hate the controls of this site sometimes. It's a very simple door. It's a very narrow door. And it just goes in there like that. On that boundary of the two types of ground. And there I think we have it. I think this is the set piece for the session. I'm quite happy with that. I think that went quite well. I might just grab this old brush that we used, bring the softness way up and the sat back down to here, and just bring a bit more desire. I'm going to have to move that bush. It's ended up right where the fucking thing is. I'm going to move it to the other side. Cut those corners a little. And then, yeah, it's just a little bit of environmental storytelling there. If we bring that there, maybe bring that there. Yeah, there we go. And honestly, like, you can spend hours tinkering with this, but you've got to consider how much time you're spending on these things, I think. And I think about an hour and a half is a good amount of time for it. What has happened? Oh, it's because I grouped them with the rugs. Beans. Be careful when you're grouping. Shit like that will happen. Okay, so what I want to do is ungroup that. Unselect the simple rugs. Then group it. And bring it above the grid. There we go. Grouping is tricky, layers are tricky, you have to be a little careful. And there we have the Brassicomancer's cottage, with a little set piece and a little bit of environmental storytelling. And I think we'll leave it there.